South is, if you look at the urban population, okay, South, 33% of the population is urban population, and contrast that to India, which is about 24%. So a fairly high propensity to spend of highly evolved consumers as far as South is concerned. 92% of India's coffee production comes from South. Okay, 60% of India's SEZ is housed in South. And almost about 2/3 of India's pump and motor industry lies in the South. Okay. If you look at the per capita income of South, okay, it's almost about 30-40% higher than India. It's almost about 130,000 Indian rupees as compared to about 80,000 rupees, which is for the country. So that again gives you an indication in terms of how important South is. A very interesting study was done in 2018 by IMRB and Cantor. And what they did was to study the aspiration index of the millennials across the various parts of the country. And very interestingly, the South's millennials aspiration index was the highest amongst all. And that personally surprised me, because I would have imagined West to actually lead that. But instead it was South which led that. Even if you look at the SEC-A, SEC-B population, which again tells you the propensity to spend in South, is almost about 33% of the households are SEC-A, SEC-B in South. And contrast that with about 120% as far as the country is concerned. So I just threw some numbers to just tell you, how big South is and what is the South potential. In any industry, for example, there are certain vectors of growth, and there are certain enablers of growth. And the vectors of growth, many of you are aware, good education, good healthcare, infrastructure, manufacturing, retail, and so on and so forth. And from an enabling perspective, two axes, digital axis as well as physical axis. What I'm going to be talking about to you is my personal story in terms of my relationship with South and my recent experiment with South and how it's paid off in record. We are into a thermic comfort area and we manufacture water heaters for the industrial segment as well as the consumer segment, both into solar as well as electric as well. So when I took over the organization in 2015, the first thing, it was a new sector for me, so I was trying to understand. I asked my team, tell me one thing from a water heater perspective, which part of the country is the highest in terms of the market size? And invariably everyone said it's not, because it's the coldest out there, followed by east and then followed by west, and south is last, 40 degrees. It's, south basically has three temperatures, hottest. And therefore there's, by that nature, the water heater market is the smallest. And when I looked at the first set of data, I looked at it and we had a less than single-digit market share. But somewhere my mind said it cannot be true, because having worked for brands like Nokia and other categories, I said South was extremely big. Then I reached out to my friends in media. And those days, JWG or more than, when they had agencies, and so I had some good friends there, and started talking about it. I said, I think Ram, we need to get a little more deeper. It's also surprising for us. And one of the things that we did was, one of the ways that national strategy works, today in India, if you have to be successful, you have to get hyper-local. You have to win market by market, region by region, because the nuances are very different. And that is when I started looking at data. So I had the first pulse data, which is equivalent to the GfK data in the water heater industry. And something shocked me. The data was staring in my eyes, and it said 40% of the water heater market lies in South. And contrast that to the kind of temperatures that you have in South. It was absolutely mind-boggling. And I said there's something wrong here. Okay, and that's probably why the famous cliche is there, saying that data tells but everything else says. Right? So immediately I launched into called a couple of agencies and got into a consumer research to find out why would South contribute to 40% of the water heater market when it's so hot here. And believe me, some of the insights actually surprised me. First, the South consumers are very different. They're bound by traditions and habits. Because being a South Indian myself, I remember when I couldn't relate, my grandmother used to get up early morning at 4 o'clock in the morning, and they would not enter the kitchen until they had their bath. And it was fairly not cool, but the weather was not conducive for having cold water bath. Okay. Secondly, from a therapeutic perspective, in South India, people actually have hot water bath. Third, being a tropical climate area and high humidity, people actually prefer hot water bath compared to cold water bath. And the last reason was, people said, I want to have a hot water bath because it regenerates me. Because the cold water just temporarily refreshes me. And I said, that's great insight. And then I started looking at, okay, how do we now harness this opportunity? So there are a couple of things we did. We said, look, we need to address the market from a physical reach perspective and also from a digital reach perspective. The physical part was fairly not very tough. It was fairly easy because that's what we've been doing over the years. Okay, in terms of how do you reach to markets, how do you get into the relevant channels, how do you get into stores. And interestingly, compared to the rest of the country, South retail is one of the most evolved retails that you will find. You will find a national chain of stores, regional chain of stores, local chain of stores, and even very strong mom and pop stores. Okay, all you have to do is to reach the right channel with the right value proposition. The interesting thing was about the digital access. And that was a little interesting from a South perspective. Because getting the physical access to the market is like getting an infantry right in the army. Digital is about air cover, which is equally important. And my theory in digital is extremely important. And I still believe in today's world, people talk a lot about digital, but in terms of action, they hardly do less than 1% of what they are actually supposed to do. And therefore, I coined this word called REAL, R-E-A-L. You can just call the digital, for my digital team in my company. And I said, R stands for reach. Okay, and even today, 95% of brands are still focusing only on reach. The next E stands for engagement. There are about less than 5% brands who started to engage with consumers. But the third and fourth, which is the ALL, which is acting after engaging, and after acting, the last L stands for listening to the consumers and their feedback. They know it. And it's a virtuous cycle. So you reach the consumers, you engage with the consumers, then you start acting with the consumers, and then start listening to feedback, both positive and negative. Okay? So we started that program, and I said, look, I want to listen to what the South consumers are telling me digitally. And South consumers necessarily does not mean the ones who consume my brand, but anybody directly, indirectly who are in touch with my brand. And believe me, it was just not the consumers and the feedback. It was also about employees and in what type of feedback they were giving in Glassdoor, LinkedIn, blah, 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 all things. So we started to measure the digital conversations in terms of trying to understand where the brand is. And then we said, at one end, we need to get the brand right for South. Because one of the insights also told us that we were not even in the top 7 position in terms of consideration set. And I said, getting to 1 is ambitious, but first we need to get to the top 3. So we made a very South-specific advertisement, okay, touching on the idioms of South, their emotional core. And South consumers are more brand-led than value-led for the rest of the country. Okay. And we did this, and very, very focused way we looked at digital conversations. Because today is an era of what I call as micro-consumer trade unionism. Thanks to WhatsApp, InstaChat, all those stuff. You make one mistake as a brand, and suddenly you see conversations happening around 10 people, and then multiplies to 100, and by the time you realize, it's all over the place. Okay, so you have to constantly keep monitoring that. So we got, the whole media right. We got the digital part of the strategy right. We got the physical strategy right. It took us about 4 to 5 months. Okay, but the good news was, 5th month onwards, and this happened in about September of 2017, until last month on month, we've been dealing about more than about 1.5% share. And today, the brand is almost into the top 3 in terms of consolidation set. That's what we're actually number 3. Okay, and we have a healthy double-digit market share. Okay, and that's where you realize, the relevance and this opportunity that South gives you. And from a media perspective, it's very interesting because South has isolated media as far as the 4 states are concerned, or the 5 states are concerned. And therefore, your ability to invest. So sometimes, you don't have the luxury of, having a huge amount of money to invest in GRPs across all. And South gives you the opportunity of actually going state by state and really going deep and really attacking the consumers. And some of the, brand marketers inside this room would agree with me that even today we struggle with Hindi brand. Because you really don't have a measure in terms of, what percentage of the Hindi brand have you reached and whether it's working or not. the numbers might grow, but the numbers might be actually growing irrespective of your reach. But some, your ability to basically measure the ROI that you're getting for every rupee of investment that you're making in the brand and media is absolutely fantastic. And we actually got more than a 50% return on investment, okay, from all our marketing investments and media investments. So my good bit to you is, please focus on this USA. It's very interesting, huge opportunities, $800 billion to about $2 trillion. It's a huge part. I think what's important is please focus on data. Data tells, getting to deep consumer insights, okay, and it's all about, rest is all about executing and getting it there. So thank you for listening to me patiently. I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you so much for giving us beautiful insight into Southern States and its contribution. We'd like to thank you with memento. May I request